I know I'm probably the last person you expected to be making this video, but right now I think we are being a little bit too harsh on New World and Amazon Game Studios, and I'm going to talk about some of the big issues that people have concerns with right now. Now I want to state that this is not a direct response to any content creator. I know that some content creators have made videos on some of these subjects, and let me just say I actually mostly agree with pretty much everything they say. But let me jump in and talk about why I think we're being too harsh, and in some ways why we're not. I think a lot of it boils down to this. New Roleplay numbers right now in the last 30 days are the lowest it's ever been in an average of 30 days. Not the lowest minimum, because sometimes when the game's off live and it actually like hits 0, but the lowest average of 30 days. It's officially under 13,000, and the next lowest was actually last year, in last July specifically, where it was 13,298. And what I'm saying here is I don't necessarily think this is a huge problem or anything like that, but I think when you have low play numbers, it's an indication of two things. One, people are not overly satisfied with your game, and then they have stopped playing. And two, the people who are playing are feeling that people have left and they're then becoming a little bit dissatisfied. So I think that's some of the reason. I also think Amazon's previous history and the fact what we got at launch is perhaps also part of this. But yeah, I think there's a bit of ill will against New World and Amazon at the moment, and I think it's reflected here. Now, I am not saying we should not criticize New World. If anything, a lot of you will know that a lot of my videos are critical of some of the features of New World, and we should rightly criticize those if you want to critique them for sure. For example, I don't really like the territory system. I don't like pre-mades in Outpost Rush. I think they should not count to the leaderboard. I don't like the way that gold is distributed. I don't like the gearing system. I could probably go on, but I'm going to stop there because the point isn't that I'm going to critique New World right in this video. The point is just right now, I feel like we have an overwhelming negative sentiment, and a lot of people are acting like New World can do no right. Everything they do is currently wrong. And that I don't necessarily believe. Take myself for an example here. I was of the opinion that at Summer Games Fest it would make sense and that we were going to get a trailer for the expansion. But you know what? I was wrong. Now, I still think that I'm right. I think that would have made perfect sense. But I'm not angry at Amazon for not doing that. Like, I'm a little bit disappointed, sure. And maybe at the time I was a bit angry because, you know, I was a bit worked up and I was like, yeah, everything's going to be cool. And then it never happened. Sure, but logically, that's not something to be angry about. If anything, I'm now trying to look at it from their point of view. For example, if we have a look at Brimstone last year, that only got announced in the middle of August and that got released in the middle of October. And that did bring players back, and so did Fresh Start servers as well. I believe and I trust Amazon that they are going to do the same kind of thing with the expansion. I still think there's a small chance that the expansion's getting delayed, but let's not really talk about that right now. But I do believe that Amazon will bring back the hype. The marketing will absolutely kick off. Sure, they must for some reason think that they don't want to hurt Season 2. I don't think Season 2 is going to have a huge impact anyway, but maybe I'm wrong. But they don't want to hurt Season 2. They'll show us a trailer after Season 2. Everything will start ramping up to the expansion. It will make sense. It's not something the way I would have done it, but okay, that's the way they're doing it. Let's just sort of trust them until it goes wrong, I think. And that's really the vibe I want to say, is like, let's trust them until it goes wrong, especially with the expansion. But there's other things that people have been complaining about lately. The content's too easy, the seasonal trial, the raids is just too easy, the fireworks are stupid, the gear resets an unforgivable crime against nature. Like, you know, we're being a bit aggressive, and I think some of these aren't necessarily overly that big of an issue. So I'll very briefly touch on each one of these. The gear reset, as I just said, let's see what we get in the expansion. There is going to be a major gear work. Let's see what we get. I know that some people, perhaps it's your first MMO, or perhaps you just wanted horizontal progression, and that apparently is what we're not going to be getting. So you have some reasons to be disappointed. I don't think you should necessarily be angry about it, because it's not like you were overtly lied to. It's not like you were misled. You got one thing, and if you played New World since launch and you're going to stop at the expansion, then you got your money's worth. There's people who say they won't pay for an expansion. Let's see what is going to be delivered first, and if it's good, people will pay, and if it's not, then it's not for you. I think ultimately, New World, it's time for a bit of a shake-up. They need to sort of indicate who the game is for, and then who it is for will play it, and who it's not for will stop. If, for example, they start doing things that I really dislike, I am prepared to stop. And if they do stuff that you really don't like, then you can stop as well. I see some people saying that, hey, if they actually make it so that Asmodeum's not worth anything, I'm going to quit. If they do that gear reset, I'm going to quit. And I'm from maybe like a more traditional MMO thing. If they are introducing like a new tier of materials like beyond orichalcum, and maybe they do an even rarer thing than Asmodeum, then I'm sort of expecting Asmodeum to possibly become redundant. It's very, very possible. Like little things like that I find are very strange hills to die on. And I think that's my whole point. We're finding very strange hills to die on. And I don't necessarily think we should. So let's wait to see what the expansion delivers. It's true that if the expansion was basically more of what we had right now, as in they literally just increased the gear score to 700 or something, and they said you have to go through expertise, you have to go through this gear grind, I would be very, very annoyed. And I would maybe even stop playing. But I'm hoping and trusting and prepared to give them a chance to see what they can deliver. I just spoke about how for some people they needed to tell us where the game is at. Now, I feel like Amazon and Scott themselves maybe need to be a little bit careful about this. When they spoke about the raid, they did say they expected 100 people to do it the first week. Now, that's a little bit weird, partly because it's a bold claim, but partly because in a way they were sort of accurate. If you look at the PTR, in the first week only about 100 players did it, but then not everybody was trying. Once that hits live, if there's no major changes to that raid, and I'm talking about the big worm raid, then more than 100 people are going to do it. It's as simple as that. It's not as hard as they sort of claim that it would be. Now, personally, it's as hard as I think it actually should be. I would maybe be happy with a hardcore mode that just added like cosmetics as rewards, but for me, that raid, it requires like coordination that we've never really needed before. You can do M10 gold without voice chat, even though it is obviously helpful, but I think it would be very difficult to do the raid without voice chat, at least having somebody call out the lights, for example. So it's not maybe as hard as they wanted, but don't fool yourself, it's not super easy. I think once people get used to it and once you've completed it a couple of times, it'll be like farmable content, okay? But that's the same with most content. We should only be really truly disappointed if it is actually what Amazon don't want. If Amazon really wanted that to be the hardest of the hard content that only 100 people across its entire release when it launches are going to complete, then maybe they failed, and it's okay to communicate that. It's also worth noting that the people on the PTR, for example, are generally your hardcore players. Maybe myself excluded because I'm pretty bad, but you know, those players on there are some of the best players around. My view when it comes to gaming is generally I'd like the majority of players to be able to complete the majority of the content, almost all of the content, and then I'd like only a small number of players to complete like the absolute elite pinnacle content, and I actually think that should mainly be PvP rather than PvE. I think when it comes to PvE, let people sort of complete it. It's okay if you have to do difficulty versions or difficulty levels, but let people complete it. It's not crazy. The problem with New World is that, you know, the whole gear progression's a little bit scuffed and what have you, but you know, when it comes to difficulty, I think maybe with the devs should maybe not talk about it too much because it leads to situations like this. It was a little bit interesting with the seasonal trial. People were like, oh, it's way too easy, this 10-man seasonal trial. And then the devs in one of the videos like, yeah, it's supposed to be easy. And then I've not really heard anybody complain about that again. But the raid, they said it was supposed to be hard, and it's not that hard. It's difficult in a way, but it's not like the hardest of the hard stuff out there. And we've just been looking for reasons to bash New World, I think, lately. For example, the fireworks. I am not a huge fan of these fireworks. Temporary cosmetics that are like $1 a pop that last 2 hours. I'm not really a huge fan of that. But I will say, it is completely cosmetic, and you know what you need to do is to simply just not buy it. It doesn't add power, it's literally just a visual fun thing. You do not need to buy it. Yes, you could say that other games do it this way and that way, but New World can do what it wants. You have the spending power there. You don't have to buy it. Personally, literally not bothered about anything cosmetic. Yes, I actually would prefer that cosmetic items in MMOs were actually attached to prestige and work in the game. But that ship has pretty much sailed. Now I'm actually okay with like pretty much cosmetics just being the thing that you spend money on. I'd much rather it be cosmetics than either player power or convenient. And I really feel like the gear sets and the season pass that actually has gear behind it, if we were going to complain, for me that's where we actually should have complained the most. And even then I don't think they're that bad. Like the pay to win's like negligible really. But the gear sets? Yeah, I think we should have got more gear sets for free. Or they should have made an effort to reduce the number of gear sets required. Overall, I guess my point is this. Let's try and give New World the benefit of the doubt here. We know what they've given us for the last year and a half. We know that there's been steady improvements. We know that there's a lot of areas that they've perhaps not given us enough content in. We know that, for example, the mutations is probably too many. We know there's not been much PvP content. We know that crafting is too random. There's a few things that we know that New World needs to fix. And some of these they've probably not wanted to do mid like expansion. I know the launch was an expansion, but Hopefully they want to be a bit more drastic at the expansion. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But trust me, once I've played the expansion and once I've seen what they're offering us, if I don't like some of those systems, I will still critique them and I will be negative about the things that I am negative about. But on the other hand, when they do something well, I'll be shouting that from the rooftops. New World's in a much better position than when it launched. Let's hope that they can deliver on some big content updates when it comes to this expansion. This is truly the first time they've called it an expansion, and let's hope they deliver on the expectations of that. I'm personally waited with bated breath. My copium levels are through the roof. And if you want to come and bask in the levels of copium, then Twitch is truly the best place, or you can support my channel by becoming a YouTube member. What I hope you definitely do right now though, is have a beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.